What is up, down, and sideways, you absolutely beautiful individuals? It is another epi of League Unlock here. Mark here with you guys for a little bit of domestic power rankings. And I'll be honest, across the board here, we got pretty massive moves across all three of the major regions that we usually do. And starting over in Europe, this is feeling like peak EU because it feels like even in massive underdog matchups, anybody is beating anybody.
It is chaos over in the LEC. There always seems to be one of these periods that comes through every year where it really becomes an absolute free-for-all. It doesn't matter how high up in the standings you were, how low in the standings. It's a total bloodbath out there on the Rift at the LEC. This weekend, I think, is it. I think we are in that period where anything is possible, and you see that with the results from this week.
And how about maybe the biggest, most shocking move on this list is Rogue is not in the bottom two because you get a series win against SK, and not only do you win, but you actually have a convincing Game 3 win. Adam has a fantastic game, and you don't throw away a lead. That's unheard of.
This is what we were talking about. This is what everybody was waiting, hoping, praying for with this Rogue roster to finally show that competitive spirit and show the aspects of this team that you thought were going to be the ones that shined through. Were going to be the reasons they could push towards victory at the end of the day. You saw it in this SK series, really important one, and this is where it's going to be all about. Yes, we're excited. We're finally seeing this. You're getting a little bit of that sweetness and reward from getting the win. You have to build upon this if you are Rogue. It needs to continue. It needs to accelerate more so as we move through these weeks. It can't just simply be a result of this period of time in the LEC where anything is possible. It has to be, this is possible because we're building towards something greater. That's what I want to see from Rogue.
And some of these other squads, I'm still not quite sure what they're building towards. Maybe the hardest team to talk about here and the most clear-cut example of the chaos in the LEC is Team Vitality. Because we were just ready after these abysmal throws against Team Heretics. We're writing them off. Okay, it's done and dusted. And then they proceed to come in and 2-0 stomp Movistar Koi? Huh?
Yeah, definitely did not have that one on the old bingo card for the LEC. Vitality coming on through and really demolishing Movistar Koi in this one. It was the slightest bit of pushback, but it really was in control for the Vitality team. And this is what we were puzzled why we weren't getting these type of results for this team, because we knew that, yes, you made the change with Niski down in the bottom lane. And we talked about that through the early first week, it finding some levels of success, still having to work through certain things, but that there are other members, the other parts of this Vitality team, the other things that they do statistically equal good results. They should be equaling those good results, but you didn't see it yet. This split, and now you get to see a little bit of that. Just like Rogue, you got to build upon this one. It can't just be this one and done. Here's something, and then it's back to the dungeons of the LEC. It's got to be better.
It's got to level out at some point to actually register what power level you are at. Are you struggling against bottom feeders, or are you stomping contenders? I hesitate to call Koi a contender now after a series like that, but I mean, you go one further up in BDS, it's the same. They're losing to some of these bottom tier teams. You've been waiting for them to come online, and then it wasn't as big a stomp as the Vitality series, but they go to 2-0 G2 in a couple of competitive series, and obviously far and away the best series we've seen out of BDS. You can call it a bit of a off day for G2, for Caps at least, definitely, and we are by no means panicking about G2, but BDS and Vitality playing like this, all of a sudden this middle of the pack from like 4 to 9 almost in the LEC is a toss-up.
It's become absolutely just the dealer's choice at this point. I really think it is in the LEC. It doesn't matter how you want to jimble them around. Everybody's going to have their own mixed, M&M, Smarties Bowl, whatever, of these teams and how they're organized in the LEC. Another example, as we just talked about, was Movistar Koi, a team that had the rough start with the tough teams and then rebounded, looking strong, looking like they were building back up towards that tier, that level of challenge in the LEC. You drop that one to Vitality and you're feeling different about Movistar Koi. You're looking around BDS, the G2 series that you talk about, and the only one that really is kind of untouched is relatively Fnatic. at the top, sitting pretty in the LEC.
Yeah, I mean, everyone else has kind of a, I don't want to say asterisk, but something you're definitely monitoring. We've, talked about KC multiple times, not the most convincing wins, even though they're winning these games. They still have more losses than both Fnatic and G2. Obviously, they've played more games than G2, especially, but Team Heretics is kind of the surprise number 4 squad here because they have shown up as of late. The young players, the young solo lanes, and Carlson and Camilo have proved that they can compete with some of the top tier squads in the LEC. Yes, they've been the recipient of a big KC throw and a big Vitality throw, but listen, they had avenues. They looked like they were going to win that KC Series 2-0.
Yeah, when you're talking about a power ranking and stuff like that, some of that context is important, but also at the end of the day, when you're looking at the standings doesn't care about context, it cares about numbers. It's looking at those results, and a squad like Heretics getting those results is going to be a benefit for them and where it'll push them towards the playoff tier and being in that bubble, being in that competition for them. That's what I'm looking forward to for this team, because again, we've talked about them so much. Really is, young guys, and Flackid really seems to be kind of the sticking label for this team. But to be able to get these results, to keep moving forward, and we've talked about them before, being a team that has shown the potential to climb up the LEC, to be a disruptor. Here we are, seeing Heretics fulfilling that disruption role, claiming the 4th spot.
And yeah, I mean, apparently a lot of teams are playing that disruption role now. And as you mentioned, yeah, the only one you're feeling, I mean, you feel fine about KC. It's Fnatic who's been the most consistent lately ever since they won that KC series. Yes, Vitality and Rogue kind of easier schedules, but they have absolutely been smashing their way through this split. They have the most kills per game in the league and the fastest game time.
And yes, all of that is wonderful. Does any of it actually matter? Do Fnatic fans really care to see those numbers now at this point in the standings and where you are in the split? Or does it only matter when we get to playoffs, when these are best of 5 matches and it really is the pressure that gets ramped up to Fnatic? Because you know what? That's where we've seen them falter. That's where we've seen the struggles of this roster, and we know it with these individual players. So it's wonderful. It's good. You're getting the check mark. Yes, you need those check marks to make sure you're getting in at the position you want to be in, but you're really not getting the approval of anybody until we see those playoff matches and we see a different level of focus from this Fnatic team.
100%, especially because they've had such good regular seasons and then kind of fizzled out in playoffs. But I will say, next week they do have Koi and G2 on the docket. So if you put up solid performances in both of those and continue this momentum, we can at least still be feeling like they're the top dogs in EU.
That's a pretty hefty combo to have to go through next week. So yeah, I'll make the little side note on that one, allowing that yes, when you do have a weekend that is going to be a competitor's weekend with Movistar Koi, with G2, I'll allow that one to have a little bit of extra sway on how I'm feeling about Fnatic when we check in next time.
But they still never get the full sticker until they beat G2 specifically. They don't even need to win a title. It's just beating G2 in playoffs and eliminating them, not just sending them down to that loser's bracket. Over in the LCK, we've definitely got less movement towards the top half of the board. It's kind of that trio staying strong, but we've definitely had more movement around that bottom to mid tier, and obviously the main consistency is the DN Freaks now. Even DRX is looking like significantly better than them. This is still one of the most disappointing teams, not just in the LCK, but like globally, that they have shown absolutely no signs of life in either of the splits in 2025.
I'm ready to put it without question. I think the DN Freaks are the most disappointing team of 2025, all across the board, all regions, whatever, because you can look at this team, you can identify multiple individual young players that have not only raw skill at the moment, but can continue to grow and develop into the superstars that we will come to know and love and cheer for and all these type of things. And it's not worked with this DN Freaks roster and in so many different avenues. And then you step up above and it is that bare level, and it's almost unfair to DRX to be lumped in with the DN Freaks, because at least DRX can have some type of pushback. Can you have some hopes and aspirations to make that climb into playoffs? DN Freaks, it's done. It's over. It's over now. It's over next split. It's done. This one's over.
There's no fire in this team. It feels like you put something on the burner and it's been sitting there for 3 hours and you went, oh, we didn't turn it on. Oh,
it's when you turn on the barbecue and everything's going right. It's going great. You get the burgers on and then you close the lid and you go back inside to maybe prepare some lettuce, some pickles, onions, whatever. And you go back out. The burgers are still raw. The propane, the gas, it ran out. It's over. It's done. We're eating salad tonight. That's the DN Freaks.
Or you eat those burgers, you get sick, because that's what happens watching some of these DN Freaks matches. But at least the Bros doubled the win total. They got 2 wins, even though they didn't get the big upset against Gen G. And, I mean, KT, it's kind of a catch-22. They get the win, and I mean, KT's win against the DN Freaks is actually enough for them to get bumped down a peg because of the fashion that they won.
Really, yeah. If we're actually being honest about that one, you're still losing points for winning that one. No one is stepping away. A winner on the day continues to be the story. Someone get my boy BDD out of here. There is a lot of stuff going on. And yes, there's certainly levels of focus and preparation and practice that could be done to maybe lift up the overall level of this KT roster. But right now, it is clear as day. Get BDD, a competitive roster around him, and you've got a ticket to some good matches.
Nongshim, we were hovering around that top 4. They lose to Hanwood, they lose to T1. Obviously a tough schedule on the docket for them, but still feeling like they're going to be a playoff team and can, be a potential for upset. But let's get to the drama on this list. T1 drops again outside of the top 4, and obviously BNK FearX. They take a game off of Gen G, even if they kind of get stomped in game 3. They take a game, competitive 2 games, and then, of course, taking down T1 in that head-to-head is enough for them to get bumped up a few spots. T1 subs in Guma for that game 3. They give him a jinx, and they still look a little bit lost on the Rift. I know people are going to say, see, Guma's not the solution. He can't solve things for T1, but there's a lot of things not going right for T1 right now.
It doesn't matter, Smash or Guma. The issues are happening regardless of who the ADC is. That's not a micro examination on the ADC position only, and the mistakes that they're making is costing. It's everybody. It's Doran, it's Owner, it's Faker, it's Kyria. The whole team is having these struggles, is having these type of moments and being in a little bit of this funk. How much of that is just, time taking its course and where it is in the competitive scene? How much of it is the factor of all the noise, confusion, discussion, drama around the Smash and Guma situation, compounded with the, vacuum left over, the exodus of Zeus in the off season? This whole function, this family that it seemed like it was for T1 is dysfunctional right now and is not getting the results that are necessary to maintain a position in that top 4 in the LCK. And I think even regardless of that head-to-head, the head-to-head makes it so easy to make a transition like this to BNK. I think even without that head-to-head, to be honest, I'd be making a push to throw BNK into this position because of how competitive they have been through this part of this spring split in the LCK in comparison to T1. Even if T1 is getting that extra higher level of grading, extra level of scrutiny that we're putting on towards them, even with those tough matches, Hanwha Life, Gen G, you're still taking BNK, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and truthfully, T1, like Doran, it still feels like they're figuring out how to fit him into the lineup. Individually, he hasn't been great, and this has been one of the weakest starts to a split that Faker's had in a couple of years. So absolutely, regardless of what's going on in the bot lane, I feel like the main consistent one has been Owner, which is a wild thing to say in the regular season because we're so used to waiting for playoff and Worlds Owner, but it's almost a bad thing that he's been the most consistent force for T1.
Outside of Worlds, it would be a very strange sentence to say that Owner is the most consistent member of T1. So that's the strange times that we're living in. I think part of Faker's struggles does extend to the whole Guma and Smash situation, not necessarily about picking one over the other type of thing, but just the imbalance that is provided for this starting roster and the whole situation around it. It's leading to guys trying to do something else, trying to do that extra mile in a situation where you're extending yourself, exposing and whatever, and the risk comes back to bite you. That's what we've seen throughout all these struggles, and even in the big matches for T1, even down to a match against BNK. So certainly one of these ones where I'm sure the rest of the T1 fans like myself, no one's going to be happy getting bumped down even further down the LCK totem pole, but it's one where you have to tip your cap, give that credit over to a team like BNK for climbing into this position, and also a recognition of what it takes, just how special it is to be at this top tier in the LCK.
And remember, everyone, if we haven't learned yet over the years, we still got a month of this round of LCK action. How many times has there been a slump for T1? They're sitting in the middle of the pack. You know, when actual playoffs and best of fives roll around, ain't nobody in the rest of the LCK going to be hoping to match up against them.
I made that mistake last year. I claimed that we would not see, no matter how the levels went and how the year went, we wouldn't see world champion level T1. Well, we did see world champion level T1, so I'm not ready to call them out just yet, even if things are looking bad behind BNK in the LCK power rankings.
Still a long journey for them either way to get back to that world championship form at the moment. Maybe only one or two teams. I'm not even, obviously not world champion form. I'm just saying world's form qualifying in the LTA. Ain't nobody reaching that step, but the journey begins way at the bottom because DSG. They said we're not going 0-15 against these top four squads. The only bottom four team to get a win in the wrap up of this round of best of ones. And of course, it was Team Liquid giving up the dub to DSG. But because they got pumped by Dig earlier in the weekend, they're still in eighth.
And you said it, because they got pumped by Dig earlier in the weekend. How does this happen? How do you go from getting pumped by number 9, Dignitas, all of a sudden says, yep, Team Liquid, APA, Jan, bring them on. Bring them over here, and we'll have
Team
a little
Liquid,
fun time.
They felt bad for them, right? Surely that's what it was.
That has to be, because otherwise it is an unexplainable reason how DSG is able to pull this one off, and it's don't mean to put them down and laugh at them type of situation, but DSG certainly has been that last place team in the LTA all the way through this point, and so to get this type of a signature win, an upset of magnitude against a Team Liquid, you hope you can use this to fuel you even further.
And I mean, really, it is a bad day on Team Liquid that they lost this one. Credit to DSG, but combined with the loss to Cloud9, that's 1-2 on Team Liquid, and there's still a lot of concerns with this team, and they've got a negative goal differential at 15. They've had some rough early games, haven't been getting advantages in the laning phase. APA has still been suspect, even if Cassiopeia is sometimes a good fallback pick that he has some of his best performances on. There's a lot to be concerned with for TL.
And especially because they're under that microscope of taking that next step of providing a level of competition on the international stage as a representative of the LTA. You're not seeing those signs. You're not seeing anything you want to sign off of in that regard about Team Liquid right now. And that is one of the really troubling things for this team, because we have seen them go to international events. We have gone through this journey and gone through the progressions for these players. And you're at the point now where you're looking, okay, Jan, yes, we're more or less still on that upward trajectory. I don't feel you're feeling the same way about APA right now and where things are. And in order for this team to continue to succeed, continue to reach higher heights and be more competitive at these international events, you need him to be one of your signature marquee players, and he certainly hasn't lived up to that billing this split at all in the LTA.
Yeah, they kind of share that with 100 Thieves, where it feels like there's a lot of pressure on one player to be playing at a high level. For TL, it's definitely Jan and Core JJ in the bot lane, and obviously 100 Thieves, it's Quid, who has the highest damage per minute and kill participation of all mid laners in the league. 100 Thieves, they'll get the bump up over TL this week because we did actually get some great Gnar performances out of Sniper.
Yeah, and that was, we always love to see our boy Sniper popping off, getting some Canadian pride out there, making sure we're doing good on the Rift. But I want to return back to Quid, because I think this is one of those ones where, think back, not too long ago, 2 years or so back, when he first stepped into the LCS at the time, and where things were and the expectations for, wait, what's going on here? What is this move? And the performances that have happened since then, and where we've gotten to. Got to give him some credit, because he has emerged as the top dog, the big fish within the pond of the LTA. Not without questions. I think at this point still there are enough, or it's close enough of a gap that you have some of these other fishies nipping at you, trying to overtake you, but still got to give him that props. And for a squad like 100 Thieves going through what they have so far this split, as we know, he is that big engine that provides everything, getting some extra help from Sniper this past weekend.
And how about the two squads ahead who are definitely separating from the rest of the pack? Cloud9, obviously the dominant 3-0. The head-to-head win against FlyQuest nabs them the throne for now in that top seat. But both of these teams have the highest team KDs of all major squads so far in this split. That's how dominant the two of them have been.
And now it might be a pretty bleak picture of the LTA painted with Team Liquid, where they are in their struggles and how things have been going. But you are going to feel great about the shades of color I'm painting with Cloud9 blue and FlyQuest green on this side, because it is good at the top of the LTA. And I think this is actually what you would have loved. This is what you you would have dreamed to have happen for the LTA at this point, is Cloud9 to rise up, to continue to accelerate, to continue to show Thanatos and Loki's skill and in their development, and now have them take over, usurp a squad like FlyQuest at the very top to provide that fire, that thrill under FlyQuest's seat to say, hey, we're not safe at the top anymore. We can't just cruise mode until we get MSI or something else. We got to prove that we're better than them. And it's going to be a race between these two teams to keep sharpening themselves up. That is only going to equal a better representative for the LTA.
You know, we've seen the best Western performances internationally that we've ever had are when there are at least two teams pushing each other, going back and forth, and proving that you can't be complacent within your region. We've seen so many times one team dominates the whole way, they get pumped internationally because they never got tested. G2 and Fnatic, that rivalry at its peak, they raised the entire region. Hopefully that's what we're getting here, the starting inklings of it between FlyQuest and C9, and maybe even 100 Thieves and Team Liquid on a good day can rise up to match them. But for now, at least at the tippity top of the LTA, you're feeling pretty damn good. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute gorgeous beauties. Thanks for hanging out, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.